Hello everyone. In this lecture, we'll be discussing what is CSS. So we have a different course for CSS. It will be in much detail, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So I already told you in the beginning that for web development, there are primarily three languages that you need to learn. First is HTML. That is basically all the foundation of your website. How is going to be the structure of your website. CSS basically is for making your site look beautiful, and what all fonts, what all text, the size of the text, and different things, the text color, the background color. So in this lecture we'll be discussing all the basic of the CSS, but if you want to learn CSS in depth, in detail, so we'll have a separate course for that will contain HTML and CSS together, and we'll also have a course that will contain all the web development course that will comprise of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript is basically for all your logic behind your website. So what will happen in CSS, all the basic we'll just study in this lecture. For studying in detail, you can buy my other course too. This course is basically for HTML, and in this lecture we'll also be learning how we can link HTML files to CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. So CSS style, styles and colors. So now let us discuss what is CSS. Cascading Style Sheets (CSS) is used to format the layout of a web page. With CSS, you can control the color, font, the size of the text, the spacing between the elements, how elements are positioned and laid out, what background images or background colors are to be used, different displays for different devices and screen sizes, and much more. Now, here's a tip. The word cascading means that a style applied to a parent element will also apply to all children elements within the parent. So if you set the color of the body text to blue, all headings, paragraphs, and other text elements within the body will also get the same color unless you specify something else. So now let us understand how we can use CSS. So CSS can be added to HTML document in three ways. So the first is inline by using style attribute. This we have studied in the attribute lecture, HTML attributes. Inline by using the style attribute inside HTML elements. Now the second method is internal by using a style tag element inside the head section, and an external method is there by using a link element to link an external CSS file. The most common way to add CSS is to keep the styles in external CSS files. However, in this tutorial, we'll use inline and internal styles because this is easier to demonstrate and easier for you to try it yourself. Now let us begin with the first type of CSS, that is inline CSS. An inline CSS is used to apply a unique style to a single HTML element. An inline CSS uses the style attribute of an HTML element. The following example sets the text color of H1 element to blue and the text color of P2 element red. We have already done this. Like for example, if you have seen my previous lecture, so for H1, what we have to do, we just have to style, color blue, a blue heading, and in paragraph style color red, a red paragraph. So let us see how it works. So basically, if you do this in line, so h1 is in one line, so you are using style attribute here. So this is inline CSS. Here in style, you are using color to be set blue. So h1, a blue heading, right? Here you get a blue heading. Also in p style color red, a red paragraph. So you will get all the text in the paragraph in red color. Now let us go back. Internal CSS An internal CSS is used to define a style for a single HTML page. An internal CSS is defined in the head section of an HTML page within a style element, right? Style element you have to use. You'll see the following example in which h1 and the text color of p is set to be blue. So what happens is that in an internal CSS, so when we start writing our code, so what do? We just write type HTML head. Inside the head section, we put a style element. Here we put the style element, and this is the syntax for writing everything. Now for body, background color should be powder blue. So we'll write body and we'll put these curly brackets, and here we'll write background color uh, there will be two dots, and then we'll write the color. We need the powder blue color, and then a semicolon, and we'll close the curly bracket. So we'll tell in body you have to do this background color, in h1 you have to do this color, in paragraph you have to do this color, and then you will close the style element and then close the head element. And in this is body, h1 and paragraph. Now let us see. So what happens is that in body we set the background color to powder blue. So as you can see, the body is in powder blue color. H1, the color of H1 should be blue. This was, told here. So the color is set to blue and the paragraph color should be red. So this is red. Now what if I add another H1 here and say hello world? So what will happen? Now let us close this H1. So what will happen? We have already said that H1, the text color of H1 should be blue. Now whichever H1 will I use in my body, it will be blue. So as you can see, hello world will be blue. Now let us say we have another paragraph. We have already set the color of the paragraph text to be red. Now if we write here, another this is another paragraph. So what will happen? The text color of this paragraph should be red. So we have got the red color over here. So we just need to define in the head section using a style element all the background color, h1p, all everything, whether it may be font color, background color, text color, spacing, anything. So we can define it here and then we can use it. So internal css works like this. Now let's talk about external css. So external CSS, an external style sheet is used to define the style for many HTML pages. To use an external style sheet, add a link to head section of HTML page. So in internal CSS, what we were doing, we were writing using the style element in the head section. Now we'll link a style sheet and we'll use a href tag that this is styles.css, the name of the file, and relation is style sheet. So this is there. Now let us see what do we have to write in the styles.css. So now we have to create a new file, that is styles.css. The external style sheet can be written in any text editor. The file must not contain any HTML code and must be saved with a .css extension. So here's what the style CSS will look like. So we'll tell body and curly braces, and then we'll write the background color powder blue, h1 to the color blue, paragraph to the color red. We have this separate file, and here what we'll have a different file. So what do we need to do? We just need to write it here, and this is how it will work. We can also see this in VS Code if you are having any doubts. So what will happen? Let us just delete this, and let me just copy first the HTML code. So I'll copy the code. So the file of this name is website.html. I'll save this code. Now I'll create a new file that should be styles.css. Now in styles.css, I'll paste all my CSS code. That is this. In styles.css, now I'll paste this in my VS Code. I'll also save this, right? And then I'll go to my site. Now here styles.css is saved. Now let us open with live server. So as you can see, the background color is powder blue, the heading 1 color is the h1 is blue, and the paragraph is in red. So what we need to do, we first need to write an HTML file. We have linked this style sheet, so we have to tell link relation is styles sheet, and href, the name of our CSS file, that is styles. So we have a styles sheet, styles.css, in which we have written all this, and a website too. And this is how CSS can be done using external editor. Now coming to CSS colors, fonts and sizes. So basically you have understood how you have to write the code in your CSS file, and your all the color, font, size, and then you can just add it. You have already understood how do you have to do it. Now you could have variations. like what are the CSS colors, font family, font size, etc., etc. Now, use of CSS color, font family and font size. So what you need to do, in we'll be studying internal CSS in this. Inline we have already discussed it earlier. For example, in H1 you could set color blue, font family to Verdana, font size to 300%, paragraph the color should be red, the font family should be. Now for changing the font you need to write the syntax font family and then font size to 160%, and then you close the style. Let us see what it gives us. So this is how it will tell me, right? For example, if I have to add a body tag in it, and then I'll just say that background color should be let's say yellow. So yellow, and I'll close this. So let's see if it works. So now the background color of whole body will be yellow. So this is how I could just, do anything. If I say the font family shouldn't be Verdana, it should be Open Sans. So this will be in Open Sans. So this is how you know things work and CSS work. Now let us talk about CSS border. The CSS border property defines a border around the HTML element. You can define a border for nearly all HTML elements. So if you want to put anything in, if I want my paragraph to be in border, so border, first we have to write 2 pixel and it should be solid and the color should be powder blue. So what will happen? We have written this is a paragraph. We have already defined in every paragraph there should be a border that should be 2 pixels thick and it should be solid, and the color of it should be powder blue. Let's say I want to change it the color to tomato. So I'll change it to tomato, and in every paragraph the border is available and the border will go till the end of the thing. We have already, a special lecture for blocks and borders, everything. So just keep on watching the course. Now let us talk about CSS padding. The CSS padding property defines a padding space between the text and the border. So what happens is that use of CSS border and padding properties. So now same border is there and there is some padding. Padding is for 30 pixels. So what does it mean? That this should be 30 pixels and inside this is a paragraph should be written. And it's the same thing in style element. We have just added a padding thing in the border. Now let us talk about CSS margin. CSS margin property defines a margin space outside the border. That margin should be 50 pixels. Like one paragraph is ended and when the border line closes, so there should be 50 pixels gap in another, you know, paragraph. If I set it to 10 pixels, I could, get like this. If I set it to 25 pixels, I'll get spacing like this. So I'll get basically all the spacing. Now let us talk about link to external CSS. So external style sheets can referenced with a full URL or with a path relative to the current web page. As you have seen, I have already shown you this example. We have used a style sheet and that was available in my laptop. So in case it is not present in your laptop, what you can do, you can in href section you can use a fully functional URL. So CSS file will copy all the data from there. And in the next example, you can see that style sheet is located in HTML folder. So what you can do, you could just write the HTML styles.css and you could link a style sheet located in the HTML folder. And this I have already shown you styles.css style sheet, and in href you could put styles.css. Now, this is the summary of the chapter, the style attribute for inline styling, the style element to define internal CSS. Link element is used to refer an external CSS file. The head element store the style and the link elements. Use the CSS color property for text colors, CSS font family for fonts, CSS font size for text sizes, border for property borders, padding for property for space inside border, and margin property for space outside the border. So this is how it works, and I want you to do this exercise. Use CSS to set the background color of the document to yellow, right? So you just need to tell, first pause it, attempt it, and then I'll tell you the answer. So now here you have to write body and you have to do curly braces. Now we have to write background color, and then we have to close this. So this was the exercise, and using this the color will change to yellow of our background. So this is all HTML CSS was. If you want to learn CSS in detail, you could get my another course. So that's all for this lecture, and in the next lecture I'll be talking about HTML links, and I'll meet you in the next lecture. Thank you.